I want to be able to communicate to you, not to ever lecture to you, but to somehow communicate to you the essence of what that focusing-oriented relational therapy is. This whole idea that people often feel that therapy is something that one person gives to another. And that was never Jean's way of experiencing it or describing it. And the importance of that hierarchy is, you know, to not feel that the therapist is more well than the client, or the therapist is wiser, or the therapist is in some way more mature. And probably you're thinking now, no, it's not that the therapist is always wiser, but I wonder if beneath our thoughts, we kind of think that the therapist is more mature. I think it's important to say, when we're laying out these general ideas first, that part of a relational therapy is making room for those feelings that we have as clients of wanting our therapists to be the most wise, the most mature, the most loving, the most everything, right? And we can have those feelings and honor those feelings without believing that the therapist is wiser than the patient. And there's all kinds of complications in that, isn't there? We can maybe get to some of them later. That if the grown-up part of me knows that my therapist has his own stuff, and that anything that goes wrong is probably some combination of us, and we could maybe work on it. But another part of me is like, oh no, that can't be. And if it could be, I never would say it. For many of us, it's so difficult to say to your therapist, you know, I think you have an investment in this, or I'm feeling how your issues may come through in this, or I'm wondering what you are needing here, or something like that. But a relational therapy is a therapy where we struggle to be able to talk about how it's a process of both of us, and that therapy isn't the hierarchy of the therapist being wiser, but also that therapy isn't just two struggling people struggling with each other. Therapy is this third thing, which I call the us. Some of the intersubjectivists call it the intersubjective field. This third thing that isn't that is sort of the child of the two, that has its own characteristics, its own struggles, its own gifts, and that we're in a relational therapy, we are trying to grow this us that we have, that we are. And so I want to give you my basic principles first, that some of you might know from reading things or seeing things of mine. But a basic principle is that not only does the client grow from the therapist and the therapist grow from the client, but that the client and the therapist are together growing this third thing, this partnership. And the partnership, as it grows, is growing both the therapist and the client. So it isn't only the client that grows through therapy. The therapist, of course, grows. I did a little talk for the helpers group on the best kept secret of psychotherapy, I think it was called, and it's on YouTube, about how the best kept secret is that we therapists are healing and growing from our work all the time. We're not just doing it for the benefit of the client, which doesn't mean we just say, oh, well, I'm going to get all I can out of this, but it's a natural process. There's a film on YouTube of my interviewing Jean Genlin about the implicit, and there's one little part that's a separate clip about Jean's using an example from his own work in order to illustrate what the implicit is about. And if you get a chance, we're looking at that in my Therapeutic Us group. If you get a chance, take a look at that. Jean is talking about how the client is always trying to make a better relationship with her music. And then she's talking about how it's the same at work. And then I'm asking Jean, or making the point with Jean, that the issues that she's talking about are really also there with Jean. And Jean is saying it's always relational, but Jean doesn't feel like that has to be brought out or talked about. My kind of relational, we don't always bring it out or talk about it, of course, but there's value in being able to talk about how what's going on for the client is also going on in the therapy, because then we can really look at it from both directions. We can look at how our relationship impacts on what's happening in the person's life, how the person's life is impacting on our relationship, how we're trying to work on, or how we are working on, maybe not knowing it, some of those same issues. So if the person is talking about feeling alienated and misunderstood in the family, a relational therapist will find a graceful way, and I think that's important, to bring in the relationship in a graceful way, to say, I'm wondering when you feel alienated and misunderstood with me, or are there times, or at what moments in this session did you feel the most understood? So to make those parallels, but not to pin the patient down with them, but to find a way that kind of interchange can grow. So when I'm talking about how we're growing the partnership, we're growing this ability to talk about the you and me of the therapy. And from my point of view, being able to talk about the you and me of a relationship is the essence of intimacy. And it's something that we in our society have a lot of trouble doing. And it's sort of taken for granted, even in close friendships, that you don't talk about, those moments of collision. You just sort of put them away, or things that you want from your friend that you're not getting, or even in focusing partnerships. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is in focusing partnerships for people to say to their partner, even though we always encourage this, can you leave a little more space here? I would love feedback about this, or you looked unhappy when I said that, to bring in the workings of the partnership into the focusing partnership.